A recently released report shows that women are doing significantly more domestic chores and family care. Well, that's because the impact of COVID-19 pandemic. Before the coronavirus, for every 1 hour of unpaid work done by men, 3 hours was done by women. Now that figure is much higher. So finding, out that this will take another 92 years before unpaid care work is shared equally between men and women. So to help us unpack these figures as well as the report and understanding of this, I'm now joined by Danya Marx from the Sonke Gender Justice. Danya, thank you so much for your time this evening. I mean, just the facts and the figures are absolutely startling. One may say that it comes as no surprise given the status quo and maybe even the status of patriarchy in the South African context. But talk to us a little bit about the report.
Yeah, thank you so much. I mean, you brought up the 92 years stat, which is quite startling, and I think it's important to notice that that's an abstract figure. You know, we've taken aggregates from time use surveys to come up with that figure, but you know, if we had to put that into real life perspective, you know, men over the years have only increased their time spent in care work by about 3 to 5 minutes per day. Whereas if a man in a household were to do half an hour more care work, you know, helping out their spouse or partner, this may prove to be a tipping point for the trajectory of gender equality in the home and beyond. And so yes, to go to the report. So this is we just worked on the State of the World's Fathers report. It's a report produced by Promundo US on behalf of the Men Care campaign. And we at Sonke Gender Justice also contributed to this report. And it's the most recent edition of an international report on the state of fatherhood globally. So we do one every 2 years, and this most recent report is on the state of care work under COVID and how societies can move closer to a more gender equal distribution of care work in the future. And I think one interesting fact to bring up about South Africa is that, as you said, in COVID, a lot more spouses have been taking on the burden of care work. So both men and women have been naturally increasing their amount of time spent doing care work. But we want to highlight that although this may seem like a great step towards increasing equality in unpaid care work, the amount of care work done during the pandemic in South Africa has increased more for women than for men. So much so that the gender gap in unpaid care work has actually increased as well. So that's quite worrying to see. And also in other southern and eastern African countries, although spouses claimed that they asked their partner to help with work, also they asked their daughters more than their sons. So there's definitely this imbalance between the genders, and you know this new report has brought 7 key structural solutions, which encompass individual, community, and national level interventions, which could result in men's increased time spent on unpaid care. You can find the report on the State of the World's Fathers website. So you know, the one so important improvement that the report found in South Africa is that there have been quite substantial steps of action taken to improve labor law, for example, which focuses on equal job-protected and fully paid parental leave for all parents as a national policy. And it also provides 10 days of partly paid parental leave for those parents who don't qualify for maternity leave, which is really encouraging, I think. But I think there's still a lot of work that still needs to be done. And what this report has really brought out is the spaces where national policy needs to change.
Danya, unfortunately, we don't have a lot of time on our hands, but I want to get to this point. Where do we start? You're saying a lot needs to be done. In about 30 seconds, how do we start and where do we start?
It's a tough question. I think it starts in different areas. So I think in the home, just becoming more aware of the fact that what are the imbalances in your specific household, and what can you do to ease the burden of someone else. But I think also in all social justice issues, working in the individual cases and in your household isn't necessarily enough. So we need a lot more activism and policy work and report writing, like the State of the World's Fathers, that we can give to governments and national policymakers and say, listen, here is the stats on what the situation is. Here's what will happen if nothing changes. So we need to work together as organizations, as individuals in the community, and as policymakers to really benefit society as a whole.
We'll leave it there. Danya Marx from the Sonke Gender Justice on a eNCA Global Fatherhood campaign. Of course, the figures in the report leaves one to be desired. The figures are startling, especially